Meeting to order, and I'll ask Councilman Gully to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remember when Bob Dorothy at the end, Jim, would yell, "And justice for all." I missed that. Yes, it was. Roll call, Councilmember Gully.
Present.
Yes, he still is. Councilmember Garrett did notify me, and she will be absent. Councilmember Parator. Here. Councilmember Cummings.
Here.
Councilmember December.
Present.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Council President Mantello here, 6 present, 1 absent. Public forum will open out to the public. Would you like to speak on anything on the finance agenda? If so, please state your name and address. If not, we'll keep rolling. Okay, we'll go to local laws. Local law 3, a local law to establish, this is introduction only. It's not amending the charter, so it does not need 3 public hearings. A local law to establish a sustainable energy loan program, open C-Space in the city of Troy. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I not need a motion? I do not. So there is a public hearing scheduled for when, Mara? I believe August 15th.
Resolution.
Good.
Okay. And we can talk about now. Steve, why don't you just, while we have time, why don't you give us just a quick update what this is going to do? I mean, I fully support it. Go
Okay,
for
so we've
Steve, turn it on.
turn it on. In the past, we've adopted legislation for this PACE financing, and while it still has not been used yet, it's amended again this time, but it improves. It removes basically the city's administrative requirements for this, and it also removes our financial liabilities. And what it does is it authorizes the Energy Corporation to put a lien on the property with the county, and then they'll collect, and they're responsible as well. So it's still assessed on the property, but it does not have to involve the city in any way. So that's basically what the change is. I'm looking for a public hearing to be held, well, any day you want, but I thought it would be the 22nd before the finance meeting would be a good time.
Are we the 15th or the 22nd? 22nd, perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we can do
then,
it.
okay, so that's what it is basically. And so it's removal of the entire law as it exists and replacement as attached in
Okay.
your package.
Oh.
Okay,
Thanks, Steve.
thank you.
Ordinance 61, ordinance amending the 2019 general fund budget to accept funds from the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services for the purpose of gun-involved violence elimination, also called GIVE. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? So moved. Motion, Councilmember Parator. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy. Discussion?
I have questions.
Yes, Councilmember Parator.
I'm not sure who to direct
Andy,
them to in the room. Thanks, Andy. I just want to congratulate Chief Owens on getting the grant. I'd like it broken down how it's intended to be spent. What are the permanent salaries, overtime, what are the consultant services and travel?
Those are all questions that I can forward to the chief to have forward to you. I know that the permanent salaries is they have one officer dedicated through the grant for funding. The same with the overtime. I can have the chief send specifics on what the consultant services and things like that are for.
Is that permanent salary for someone who is going to be involved?
It's an existing officer that's involved within the grant. What they specifically do, that's a question for the chief. I can forward it to him.
Good.
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
so just to be clear, and we can wait for the chief if you don't know, but is it just one officer?
It's one
The
officer.
permanent salaries, and then is the overtime the same officer, or are there other officers?
That I don't know. I can have the chief explain that.
Monica?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so with the overtime, like if we have situations, right, and then we want to deploy additional officers to specific areas to target just to kind of watch or to look at enforcement and stuff like that. The GIVE grant allows us to be able to take and reimburse our overtime costs with that amount of money. So that's why it says like the 67,000 or something in
Yeah.
overtime costs. Actually, it was different.
It's
Yeah, the 50,000 in overtime costs. So that is specific to, being able to deploy officers in different areas. So like if we have an incident in South Troy and we want to deploy additional officers to that area at an extra detail, we can, if it captures itself within the grant guidelines, we can actually utilize that funding to offset the cost to the city.
Council President.
Yeah, sorry, Councilmember Carter.
Deputy Mayor, what about the $38,000 for consultant services with the GIVE grant?
That one I would have to wait for the chief to ask about. Yeah, but-
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, but it's all dedicated. If you read the grant award, okay, it's all dedicated to those specific things.
To guns involved in violence.
Yeah, the grant award is there and it stipulates what the money can be spent towards.
The consulting arrangement is with the Finn Institute, and they employ a crime analyst for us. So they analyze crime patterns and share information with us. It's a long-standing contract that we've had with them for some years. I don't know when it started, but it certainly predates us by several years.
Thank you.
Council President?
Yeah, and if I could ask real quick, I could have sworn, didn't they catch someone in North Central through this grant? I could have sworn it said that the GIVE grant provided the overtime.
Yeah,
Or-
so the overtime that's used when there's a hot spot, when there's something going on, we need to pour additional resources into a particular neighborhood or a particular building.
Right,
The GIVE grant gives us an opportunity to fund the overtime for that operation.
perfect, Councilmember.
Let's see, just wanted to confirm with regard to the Finn Institute. Is this the entirety of the contract with Finn Institute, or do they do other, I know they do a lot of crime analysis work. but-
No, this is the entirety of our relationship, the compensation that we pay them.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 61 carries 6-0. Ordinance 62, ordinance amending the capital projects fund and debt service fund budgets. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings. Andy, did you want to add anything about the bans? Oh, sorry.
So this is the premium from the band sale. All I'll say is we got rates that were better than anyone ever anticipated. On both the bond anticipation notes and the serial bonds. So this will go into the debt service fund. Then we'll transfer it as part of the 2020 budget back into the general fund to offset the cost of the interest next year when we pay off the bands. So, but this was just the premium. We didn't get a premium on the serial bonds, which wasn't a good or a bad thing. Serial bonds, the investment firm that bid just bid a straight interest rate, which we got 1.5% for one of the years in the serial bonds. So
Hey, Andy, you did a really good chart update for us a while back on our bonds and status. I know you're swamped with the 6-monther. Could you maybe sometime within the next 6 to 8 weeks, a couple months, update that?
yep, I can do that.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And just so folks are aware, Andy is going to give us a 6-month on the 22nd. I said the 15th, Andy, but it's the 22nd, okay? All right, ordinance 62 carries 6-0. Ordinance 63, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 garbage fund budget. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Parator, discussion?
Council President?
Yes,
I have
Councilmember.
2 questions.
Andy or Monica? Thanks. Why don't you just pull up a chair?
Yes. Nice little note. There's a note. There's a love note up here.
Ah,
Bring the mic closer.
It does say that, actually.
That's good.
It says, do this. Yes, Ms.
Deputy Mayor, just
Yes,
two quick
ma'am.
questions. One, what's a quote-unquote grinding at the Alamo? And then secondly, under special recycling, what are the consultant services for $58,000?
Yep. So as you know, we are getting ready for our Household Hazardous Waste Day this weekend. So the grindings are actually all of that lovely yard waste that everybody gets rid of. All of that ends up down at the Alamo, and then every year we call in a company. This year was Gallivan. Traditionally, it's Gallivan. They provide us some really good pricing to come in and grind that up. So we have that expense every single year. We are working our way towards trying to have clean grindings so that we can actually reuse them ourselves. We were able to avoid having to pay an additional fee due to the contamination this year to actually just have them trucked away. We were able to screen them a little bit, and we got approval from DEC to help use them up on the landfill with some voids that we needed to fill, along with what Chris Wayland is doing with his sludge. So we've been able to kind of do that and be able to do some maintenance up on the landfill cap too. So the grindings are the grindings is exactly what it is. It's grinding up all of the yard waste. And then what we did was with Renee working on the budget and doing all those kinds of things, and she's dove right into the Alamo and this whole special recycling program. With the bulk pickup line held the cost of the hazardous waste day in its lines. What we did was we plucked it out and put it into the special recycling fund, the account line for the special recycling, instead of in bulk, and that's where it should be because we're going to be doing some more stuff. And since we're having 2 hazardous waste days this year, one this weekend and one in November, we were able to segregate it out, and that way it's a little bit easier for us to tally.
I just want to say the memo that Ms. Panetta sent out about explaining about what one can and not put in the
Yeah.
yard waste bags was really well specified and helpful.
Well, and it's really one of those things that's a big expense for us. It's a $20,000 a year expense for us to grind up all of that yard waste. And if it's in a contamination,
Right.
you know what I mean, it can add to that. So if we can get and educate people to not put in plastic bags, not make sure there's no garbage in it. I mean, there's bottles, there's, you name it, it's in there. So making sure that we don't cross-contaminate at the site as well is another big thing too. Making sure that something doesn't blow into it or other waste gets involved. So they've done a really good deal, a really good job of being able to, section that stuff out down there.
And
Thank you.
Monica, just for the public, this Saturday, the hours and what will be accepted.
So that was a first come, first serve on a coupon. All the coupons have been given out.
They
So
have.
yes, they have. We gave away 225. That's why we're having a second day this year. So hold your stuff because we will do a second day. So 225 tickets were given out. And that'll cost, this is also one of the programs that we do that's reimbursable through DEC. So we get a 50% on that on qualified material. So we're going to do the second one in November because we know it's a really big opportunity. We had a couple people come in lately looking for coupons. So we put them on a wait list in case people don't show up, and we can give them a call on the day of.
So when the person actually comes, you'll have a checklist and coordinate that coupon with the
Yep.
person. Is there a max that the person can bring or?
Nope.
Really?
Nope.
Wow.
No, there's specific items, and it was addressed in when we did the release. There's
Right.
items you can bring in and you don't. And when you come in for the coupon, we actually give you a list of those items again, just to remind people of what they can and cannot bring. And then from that on, and we're looking at paint diversion now. So we're looking at a whole bunch of great stuff. Renee's been doing a great job on looking at alternative ways to deal with waste, knowing that people still need to get rid of it, but what we can do with it on our end to not cost us money to take, and all of a sudden also those kinds of things that we have traditionally said, no, we can't take that. Now we're looking at ways, how can we take it and divert it and kind of get rid of it for our residents as well.
That's awesome.
Councilmember Kennedy.
One thing on the paint mixing
Screen.
recycling project, I believe, did I hear that we're looking for people to donate 5-gallon buckets with lids?
I haven't heard that, but you can certainly reach out to Renee.
Okay.
Reach out to Renee. I'm sure she'll let you know.
That'd be
And
awesome.
I think, and then
Because what
the
they're
other-
going to do is they're going to screen the paint, and then they'll be able to reuse the paint.
Yeah, okay. We'll find out.
Yep.
But then the other thing, did you say the grindings, we're able to take them to our existing
landfill.
How does that work?
So they literally trucked them up there. We got a whole bunch of calls from residents. They're like, "What's going on with the landfill?"
Yeah.
But yeah, they were able to truck it up there, and then they're able to, spread it out and then be able to fill. We have some voids that we have to take care of. Monolith is going up there as well. That was one of the conditions of their permit too through DEC. So Chris has got this sludge up at the water plant that he's got to do something with. So we've been creative in having conversations with DEC. Is how do we take this waste that we have? How do we take this waste that we have and put it together and be able to solve a problem? And they've been really great to work with, thinking outside of the box on that. So we're able to solve our own problem.
Awesome.
Great.
Okay.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
let's see, 2 questions. Actually, no, the first one was about the paint. It sounds like you have that.
This
but-
this is a pilot year for the paint too.
Yeah,
so
looking
like,
forward to that.
yeah.
And just, I guess, for the public, latex paint generally is not hazardous. It can be dried out and thrown away in normal trash, but we're figuring out ways to, rather than throw it out, reuse it,
Correct.
combine it into a neutral gray that we can use to cover graffiti or whatever else.
Yes.
So definitely looking forward to that process, as well as, I'd advocate for, to the extent possible, some kind of bank of nice colored paint for murals and things like that. I know that's been discussed in the past. I would look for partnership to do that. But then in terms of the Alamo itself, I know there's been ongoing back and forth about whether and how it can be open again for other kinds of drop off. Where are we at with that?
So Renee's obviously trying to clean it up right now for the hazardous waste day, and then the biggest thing is what is the reuse. So there's the solid waste advisory board's been looking at that whole process of how do we. The whole idea is to be able to get a diversion center, a recycling and diversion center, essentially, so that if people want to drop stuff off, we have some place to put it or take it and put it off rather than having just to throw it away, because there's a cost to that, right? If people just bring their stuff to the Alamo, we still have the expense, right? We still have the cost of the tipping fee to get rid of it. So they've been working hard on trying to create a diversion program. So if people do bring their bulk stuff down to the Alamo, how can we divert it rather than having to pay for the cost? So they've been spending an enormous amount of time doing that. The whole education series about the grindings, making sure that we have clean compost, so that if we do all of a sudden have all these grindings and we create mulch, we want to make sure it's clean mulch, because then we can open up to the residents and say, hey, instead of going and spending $35 a yard for mulch, you can just come down to the Alamo, grab some mulch and take it home.
I can put the park fence in.
Yeah, so those are the things that they're working on now. It's a process because you have to clean up the existing site, but also kind of prep and educate people in order to get to the process you want to be. I personally am one of the big advocates of getting the Alamo open as soon as possible. I know it's a huge resource for the residents, but making sure that when it's open, it's staffed correctly, it's managed, and it's operating, because we do have to get permission from DEC to do that. So we have to make sure that we have a plan in place so that we don't run into issues in the future like we did before.
Great. I'm wondering about mattresses.
I think for as much as we all spend in mattresses, the mattress company should take them back.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like scissors. Have you ever wondered where all the scissors go? How many scissors have you bought, Council President, for your kids in school?
Several.
I think
and
there's a
I
thing.
still have them.
I think they send them back and recycle them and just repackage them and sell them to you again. I really do.
Never really thought about it.
Wait till you all have kids. You'll know. I've bought more scissors in my life than I know what to
You
do.
should write a children's book about scissors. What do you
It's
think?
crazy.
Mattresses.
Think
Yeah,
about
so
it.
mattresses are the same. The challenge with
We could
mattresses
use the scissors.
are the contamination of the
Um,
mattresses. That would be.
right.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to think through. My understanding is county waste has a minimum fee that's exorbitant for a single mattress, and so I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to have a bin that gets filled up with 8 mattresses, and then we
No, that's what the Alamo would do.
right.
The Alamo we'd have a collection point, and then some stuff you can divert, right? If it's good furniture, we can, I mean, a lot of this stuff,
So then
if
we
there's
charge
even,
a similar fee without the
yeah, one of the things that we
collection
were working towards was instead of the $25 pickup fee, if you were able to reopen the Alamo, then you would say, okay, you would just pay the per unit fee if you came and delivered it itself. That was kind of the original thinking along that lines with the bulk, so that if somebody had a pickup truck, instead of us picking it up, they could just take it down to the Alamo and just pay the per piece fee.
I'd love to be able to have a sign in an alley that says drop off at the Alamo, $10, drop off here, $250, and
Yeah.
fine, whatever.
True,
You know,
right.
um,
But unfortunately, the sign isn't for the neighbors.
well, no, agreed. But if we do have an alternative for a place people can bring mattresses,
No, absolutely. And that's the goal. That's the goal of reopening the Alamo, is just you have to make sure that you manage it.
Great.
And that you have those pieces in place. Because now what you just talked about, and all of a sudden somebody takes something down to the Alamo, now you have a cash collection, right? You have somebody who's maintaining the site while people are dropping things off. You have to have traffic control. So now all of a sudden you're talking 2 or 3 people instantly. So we need to have the plan to make sure that it's a process.
Council President.
great.
Yes, Councilmember Kennedy.
Did not know we were doing solid waste conversations.
I know. Is it
We have some
possible?
time to kill between our special meetings, so, go ahead.
Is it possible that there was an uptick in illegal dumping in South Troy that coincides with closing the Alamo?
I haven't seen that. I know that we have hot spots in certain
Yeah.
areas, and those are notorious. Like, we could name them for you. Bob Carl's, you know what I mean? Like, and I think a lot of, like, for example, behind Bob Carl's, that's been a notorious location because they come right off of the highway, they dump, or they just, you know, we had one situation where it was somebody from a block away dumped there. It's a dead end alley, you know what I mean? It's really, you know, quiet. And what happened is somebody bought that building and now is now going to put cameras up for us. So those kinds of influences, now all of a sudden you have people who can change behavior patterns just through technology. So those are some things, but I haven't necessarily seen that. I think it's just more people are talking about it.
Any further?
I do recommend people that if they do see people, or it's a habitual thing. Like, I know on Brunswick Ave, we have a vacant house that somebody dumps something in front of every Sunday. People have noticed it. Take a picture of the person in action, see if you can get the license plate, and then let us know, because what we'll do is Monday morning, we'll go rip through the bags, figure out who it is, and then we'll send the police out to them. And we did something like that behind Bob Carl's. It turned out to be somebody from a different city. So, I mean, anytime that we can document something and prove it and have some sort of photographic evidence of it, then that's how we can actually take care of that stuff. And the more we do that, the more the message will get out.
And you know what, Monica, the other thing I've noticed, a couple spots, because there was a place up by, for a park off of Marshland where people were dumping over in the parking lot by the softball fields.
Yep.
And back when, in the 90s, we put a sign up in terms of fines.
Yep.
And really exorbitant fines, like $500
Yes.
and things like that. So maybe if that would even add a deterrent,
Mhm.
you know, it's worth
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then,
Sure.
and then when people are caught, what's the process? Have you thought about making that a more public
Sure.
thing?
Paying the first one, nobody else will.
Sure. I would
You know,
love to. Just like
I think right now there's a
DEC sends out their enforcement officer highlights on a.
Yeah,
on a
I mean, I think just right now
blog.
there's a sense that people very rarely get
Yeah.
caught, and I think we can help push back
Sure.
against that
Yeah.
and make it clear that you might get caught if you do it, and if you do, you're going to pay a fine.
Just don't call me if I do it.
No, I mean, you know, dumping. Is-
Yeah. No, and I think once we get that first couple ones, you know what I mean? Like, we'll make sure that it gets known. Correct. Correct.
Council President.
Council member.
And did I hear you correctly that the consultant services were in the tipping fee were already scheduled to not be used for tipping? In other words, do we?
Yeah, they were included in the bulk fees, so we
Okay.
just split them out. We just took it and took it out and put it in where it was supposed to be.
Councilman, so just be,
Council member
they're
Cummings.
sort of tipping fee, right? It's a cost to the company that comes in and gets the hazardous waste and takes it away for us.
Yep.
So it's similar to a tipping fee, but that's
Correct.
it's not like we're
It's a
hiring
removal
consultants
cost.
to run the program.
Yeah.
Having
And
them
the
take-
company we have this year is doing everything. Like, literally, we used to have to supply substantial staff for it. And this year they are literally doing pretty much the whole process, which is great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council President.
Thank you. Council member.
Just one clarity, the 58,000, is that just for that one grinding, or is that
No, no, no.
58,000 to support the Alamo over the bridge?
So that's the grindings, but it's also the hazardous house, the waste days.
Okay.
It's
fine.
both.
So, thank you.
All right. We're good? Awesome. Thank you, Monica. On ordinance 63, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Ordinance 63. Ordinance 64. Ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Parator. Discussion?
Council President?
Yep, Councilmember Parator.
I have a question.
Sure, Andy?
Thanks, Andy. What are the $3,000 for additional chemicals for the golf course?
So we had done a transfer out of that line earlier this year. Greg Tudor has to have the money put back. So it's just for various things he needs throughout the summer up at the golf course.
And do residents whose properties border that golf course, are they notified in any way of chemicals being put down?
I know
I
they
don't
put
know that.
signs up. They put
I
the
don't know that.
flags.
Well, as a property owner whose lawn borders the golf course, I know they put a sign down by the place where people tee off, but I've lived there 9 years, and the only way I know that chemicals are being put down is if I see the guy out there with his mask on at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's problematic if those are actual chemicals being put down. Can be highly carcinogenic and bad for humans, for pets. And that's been a question on my mind for years as a property owner. And it was heightened in my mind when I saw that $3,000 for chemicals. So I would like that question answered.
Oh,
Well, and, Councilmember Paratar brings up a really good point. So you're saying the residents immediately bordering the golf course, even if they put up like flags wherever they put the chemicals, because I've seen those, but you guys are not notified whatsoever.
No, there's no,
Okay.
I live on
So-
Park Boulevard,
Yeah.
we border the green of the golf course. And I've had, children, babies crawling around on the grass. I've had pets, cats, dogs, neighbors, not to mention any human breathing that in.
We should, we can certainly put in the code, but immediately we should ask, maybe Monica, if you could have Greg. Perfect. Okay, Monica's on.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good point. Hey, Andy,
What's up?
while we're on this Ferry Street, do you know, what's, maybe Monica could answer. I saw that monies are going to repair. What exact repairs are those? Right, the tunnel. Is that reimbursing?
That's
Okay.
going back
All
to
right,
when
good.
the emergency deck.
Okay, very good. All right. Further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 64 carries 6-0. Ordinance 65, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. And
One of you
this-
guys stepped up.
This is the 7,500 line item that goes with the resolution 2 weeks ago that was unanimously passed. So have we heard anything from the county?
Council President?
Yeah,
I-
Councilmember.
I haven't heard anything from the county. Maybe someone else can speak to that, but I just wanted to take the time to thank everybody for that bipartisan effort on the early voting location. As has been noted in the past, I think it's important that we do identify a site within our city limits. And I thank my colleagues for supporting that measure.
And if you recall, we talked, Councilmember? Nothing? We talked about obviously District 2, and we put some amendments in that resolution, which I think are good for the city of Troy in terms of coming back to the council, and hopefully North Central areas like that. So I would ask, Mara, do you mind maybe reaching out to the clerk of the county or even the Board of Elections?
Council President, I was
Yeah.
going to speak to that. I do know the county legislature is working on a resolution to match this funding.
Okay,
So
All right.
they're on it, I think.
okay,
Council President?
yes.
I'll just make a note, there was also a letter submitted by several organizations in the area recognizing, also being in support of an early voting site in Troy. The New York Civil Liberties Union, Troy Area United Ministry,
Russell Sage College.
Unity-
Russell Sage
Unity
College, Unity
House,
House,
yes.
and NAACP.
Yeah.
So I want to thank those folks as well. Melanie Trimble from NYCLU, Judy Meyer, the League of Women Voters in Rensselaer County, Renee Powell, the president of NAACP, Chris Ames, president of Russell Sage College, Reverend Donna Elia of Town, and Chris Burke, chief executive officer of Unity House of Troy.
Well, hopefully, the county, will move forward, so hopefully we'll be notified, because I would think that there's a time frame that all of this obviously has to happen by, so.
Council President,
Councilmember Perito.
I just want to say on the record that I object to the city council coughing up $7,500 of Troy taxpayer money to put an early voting site where it is needed in the inner city, poorest area of Troy, where many people walk, bike, or take public transportation, instead of the two outlier locations they selected, which would require 2 bus transfers and nearly an hour commute for people who live in downtown Troy. Those were politically strategic choices on behalf of the Rensselaer County Board of Elections that I find highly discriminatory against poor people in the city of Troy. And I applaud my colleague, Mr. December, for spearheading this effort to work with the Rensselaer County Board of Elections. And my colleague Deb Garrett had an important previous obligation, but it was very important to her to be on the record that that early voting site ideally be in the north central neighborhood of Troy, ideally at School 2, which is centrally located for many people in the inner city of Troy.
And just for the record, the Board of Elections obviously made that decision, and it was bipartisan. So, we're fixing it. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
So ordinance 65 carries 5-1. Ordinance 60, actually, before we go to ordinance 66, we'll go to resolution 52, which is tied to ordinance 66. So we have to pass the reso first. Resolution 52, resolution authorizing the mayor, not deputy mayor, so what we'll have to do, we'll amend it after. Resolution authorizing the deputy mayor to execute a contract with the Tangram Design LLC to design Troy wayfinding system. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. Now, I will make a motion to delete deputy from that resolution, so it'll read resolution authorizing the mayor, and we'll do it obviously consistent throughout the resolution to change deputy mayor to mayor. So it'll read the mayor to execute a contract. Okay, I made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings on the amended, on the amendment. Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On the amended resolution, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Now, do we have discussion on the amended resolution? I was actually talking to Steve Streitman, and maybe you could give us an update and what you kind of see moving forward here, Steve.
Okay, so it's on. This is part one of a 2-part action to complete citywide wayfinding for the city, much needed.
Much
The-
needed.
The Troy Redevelopment Foundation is paying for the design portion, and when the design portion is complete, then the IDA will bid out and fund the construction and implementation component of this. It's important that we are also at the same time we have 3 studies going on for our three of the main gateways into Troy: the Green Island Bridge, the Congress Street Bridge, and the Hoosick Street Bridge. So we'll tie that in with that. I mean, that'll be an important piece of this. And it's basically, so there were 7 applications or 7 responses that came in. Tangram was not the least expensive, but it was midway through the pack, and there was a committee that reviewed this. 3 city staff, business owner, a member of the bid, a member of RPI as well. So this is, like I say, much needed. It will have key entranceways all around the city, including from the east, north, and south, as well as additional signage as you come into the downtown portion to point to some of the major attractions, including City Hall, Farmers Market, the county
Yay.
building, and we'll be working with stakeholders to make this happen.
Steve, a couple quick questions. As you know, music to my ears, including City Hall. More importantly, though, the gateways, because many of those signs are old, they're faded. It's so outdated. What's the time frame do you envision, and could you please keep us in the loop, because we obviously may have ideas to help out the stakeholders as they move forward.
So I can update you. I imagine this is like a 6 to 9 month process just to get the design done. It'll take us probably a month to kick things off and get all the meetings set up and have the consultant review the existing signage and familiarize themselves with the city. But so I imagine the IDA will be bidding this out probably in the late winter, early spring, and construction should occur next summer.
Long overdue. Further questions, discussion? That's the one at Hoosick
It's the
Street.
best one. We're
Yeah.
using this one, right?
Yeah.
And the removal of all the farmers market signs pointing to the wrong places as well.
Council President?
Council member.
Yeah, I would just like to say thanks for this work. I think it's really important that we always do put our best foot forward when we're talking about our entryways into the city. I know in this council, people have talked about the need for that, and it's really exciting to see this work moving forward. You did mention, I have a question about the meetings coming up. Are you talking about what kinds of meetings are we looking at? Are we going into the neighborhoods? Or are you talking more?
It'll be more with stakeholders, probably business districts, major institutions.
Well, I'd encourage thinking about maybe some of the communities, neighborhood associations that are in the areas. There might be some.
We could present out on the progress and look for additional feedback as we're
Absolutely,
doing that.
that'd be great.
Definitely do not need to overcomplicate it. We need it done. But this is long overdue. Thank you.
Council President?
Yes.
I applaud the administration on the work on this. I think it's very important. The signage in the city is a mismatch, humble jumble, really gives a very negative impression of what is a thriving city. I was happy to see that a focus of it is going to be directions to parking. I've gotten so many complaints and people that, the downtown meters and how do you work them? And I've probably tutored 50 people, just keep some quarters in your car. It's really easy, just stick a quarter in there and you get, a lot of parking. But I know the cities that I've traveled into, some cities you go in and there's very clear directions to where the public parking is, not just one sign, but several signs that direct you there.
Yeah, so we'll look at obviously the parking, and if we move towards having an app that helps use the kiosks, I'm sure that will be on the wayfinding as well. So we've considered that. And there is like a parking committee, so they'll be involved in this as well.
And I would encourage our head of IT committee to be part of that app. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah, maybe the technology committee can have their first meeting.
Second.
But-
They have budget.
they have-
We had a budget meeting.
Okay. Quick question. Yeah, is there any kind of formal commitment from the IDA to pay for the implementation?
They passed a resolution last year, so they've already passed the resolution authorizing the payment.
Awesome, good question, council member. Anything else that you should ask, Steve?
No, I think that's it.
Cool, thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 52 carries 6-0. Now we'll bump back to ordinance 66 to do the actual transfer of the budget line. Ordinance 66, ordinance amending the special grants fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 66 carries 6-0. Ordinance 67, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 water fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Ordinance 67, resolution 48. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Troy authorizing the execution of a payment in lieu of tax pilot agreement by and among the City of Troy, MLK2 Housing Development Fund Company Incorporated, and MLK2 Associates Limited Partnership. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Parator. I'm going to ask Deborah Witkowski and Duncan or Steve, whoever, if you could, only because some of the council members were here for the initial pilot on this. I don't believe, I think it was the prior council, or was it last year? It was last year. But Deb or Duncan, if you could give an update and why we're doing this, and we actually spoke before the council meeting. Maybe Duncan or Deb could also talk about they're scaling back the number of units and things like that. So just the important gist that the council should get. Thank you.
I think Duncan
You can
had,
pull it right out. Pull it right out, Deb. Thanks.
and I think Duncan brought a map. So he could
Sure.
Oh,
show you that.
Awesome. Show the public first, Duncan. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, Oakwood Avenue, as you all know, Eddie's Lane runs down from Oakwood Avenue, and this is the site of the existing Martin Luther King property. We are de-densifying the site to create play space and green space, and part of the overall plan is to build 21 new townhouse units to replace some of the units that we are demolishing. That's going to be delayed a couple of years. We're going to build build 37.
Duncan, if you could use the mic, that'd be
Oh,
helpful. Thanks.
sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Built in.
So,
Do you want me to hold that? Duncan?
yeah, thank
I
you.
lost my non-sunglass prescription.
So the proposal now is to build the first 37 units by rehabilitating the existing unrehabilitated units on the Martin Luther King site. Many of you have seen the lower units that have already been rehabilitated. So this will complete the rehabilitation of the existing units. We will then have to seek additional state funding in another year to build the 21 remaining units. We've made a commitment to, Deb and our company have made a commitment to HUD to pursue that 21 units, and a commitment to the state housing agencies.
And they'll be up here.
We would hope to close on the construction loan in November and start construction over the winter. And this resolution is really just adjusting for the scale reduction in the pilot agreement. So the pilot agreement is in line with the real estate.
And Duncan, I believe Deb said, how many folks are already signed up to go into the new ones? Did you say there's?
For the 37
Yes.
units? You mean our waiting list?
Yes.
It's like 400 plus.
And it's unbelievable. The transformation of where Troy Housing is today compared to when I grew up walking through Martin Luther King, it's unbelievable. And I applaud everything that Troy Housing is doing. It's incredible today from 30 years ago. It's just unbelievable. And your new units are fabulous. They're
Great
unbelievable.
It really is.
But saying that your construction costs came in high, so hence why we're here tonight, correct?
Right.
Exactly right.
Council President?
Council member.
I'll just take the opportunity to continue advocating for where possible and wondering whether you're already exploring and how scattered site or infill. I know there are partner organizations that certainly
Mhm.
do some of that, but wondering whether you've thought about it as a mechanism for. I know it's a priority from HUD's perspective to reintegrate public housing into neighborhoods.
And the communities and neighborhoods, exactly right. Yeah.
And we are doing that. We're with Arnold Fallon
Yeah.
right now.
Great.
How's that going? Good.
I mean, we're in conceptual, but yeah, it's a plan.
And then in terms of this one, I certainly there's opportunity above, and it'll sort of start to tie into the Oakwood corridor here. And I know there's a pathway and there's some connections down into the neighborhood below. But then there's, I think, a waterfall and a little other property owners to the south that make it difficult to tie into that neighborhood. Is that right for the
Is that the
long-term sort of connecting Martin Luther King more deeply into
To
the
the-
neighborhoods around it?
to
It
the-
seems like there's some physical barriers to doing that, but
There's certainly a
There are.
topography barrier. We did build a handicapped accessible ramp in phase one back down into North Central.
Right.
But it is not an easy ramp to navigate. It is technically accessible, but it's long.
It's awful.
Great.
Council President?
Councilmember, do you have more?
No, that's.
Okay, Councilmember Parator.
I just want to express, I think it's really a shame that there were going to be 58 units and now there's 37. That's 21 fewer families that could have been housed. I'm concerned that this wasn't handled with the expediency that it might have been handled, possibly by the Troy Housing Authority. I don't know. I just know that if this has been a problem for a while, this was started 1 year and 9 months ago, and we're just hearing about this now. This council is hearing about this now. I'm concerned about the 21 units that are going to be completed in the future with new funding. I would urge for expediency with that, with seeking the funding and getting those units built. The fact that we have 400 people on a waiting list shouldn't be something joyful. It should be something that we as a city and as a city council are concerned for building units for those 400 people.
So I appreciate that. And the error wasn't the housing authorities, it was my company. We underestimated the escalation in construction costs.
Okay.
And the delay was not on the part of Deb or Beacon for that matter, but we had to renegotiate with the state housing agency who is funding the capital cost of this project, the construction and the related soft costs, doing fewer units that were going to cost more each than they originally awarded, because their funding award, which is public money, is competitively distributed, allocated, and they wanted to make sure they were getting the best possible deal. So we had to rebid the construction, and it just took a very, very long time.
And
Thank you for that
Deb,
explanation.
yeah, and we appreciate that. Do you have more questions, Councilmember?
No, thank you.
Deb, if you want to respond to the 400-something folks, I don't think anyone was applauding that, but maybe you could talk about why and
Well, I
reference.
think just today, there's a need for affordable housing. And I mean, that's just one waiting list. Some of our waiting lists are in the thousands.
Yeah.
In Troy?
In
Yeah.
Troy,
Conway, I know, has an incredible waiting
Grant
list.
Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the-
Council President?
Councilmember Kennedy, then
Just
Councilmember
to,
Cummings.
Council Parator's concern, there was a project to add more affordable housing where the Leonard Hospital site was, but the previous council voted that down.
Yes.
And then added the demolition costs to the city taxpayer budget. So that was a huge loss. So it's not
Yes.
it's not anyone's specific fault to blame, but there's a lot of factors contributing.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Cummings, and then I would like to address that. Go ahead.
Let's see. Talking about
Affordable housing.
For the construction costs.
Well, maybe I'll remember while you.
Anything else, Deb, Duncan?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Further
you.
discussion,
Council Chair.
Councilmember Gully? Yes,
Just to address Councilman Kennedy's
I knew you were going to jump in.
explanation. The reality is, it was voted down because one of the members that were looking forward to passing it had recused himself from the vote. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there's sometimes where you have an area that is not functionally right for a project, or its size of a project, and to do a project like that in Lansingburg would have been more harm to the people who would have lived in it than good. When you're going to create a society of people that you want to be able to have mobility, and as community builders put it, to create them to feel like they're in life, you can't have them wait for a bus every day to go somewhere. You have to give them ability to get out and go do things. So on your response, it was the wrong area. It was the right project, just in the wrong spot. And there were numerous spots that were looked at previously before they went up to Lansingburg. Unfortunately, that's where we are today, and we can look forward to another area later.
Council
What's
President,
needed?
yeah, just
Councilmember Kennedy.
you clarify that's your personal opinion, right? That's pure basic speculation.
It definitely is my personal opinion. We're all here to voice our personal opinion.
And to get back to MLK2, what's your time frame moving forward now?
We are expecting to
Do you
start.
mind using the mic? Sorry.
I'm not used to these.
Terrible in here.
We are expecting construction at the end of this year or the beginning of 2020 to begin.
And if obviously you could keep us apprised, maybe give us a
Give you
quarterly.
some tours.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
encourage, if any of the council haven't been up for a tour, I've done a couple. They're honestly what you're doing up there, and I would love to see some of the other, obviously, areas be as redeveloped as you focus on Martin Luther King.
Yeah, anybody that wants to come up, just give me a call and, I'd love to take you through.
Absolutely. Councilmember Cummings?
Just on that, also wanted to check in on the timeline and process for looking for additional funding for this next section. Is that just going through the same state process? Are there other possible funding mechanisms? What's the plan there?
The logical process is to go back to the state Homes and Community Renewal for this funding. We are prohibited by their internal rules from applying for that funding until we at least start the construction of this next phase of Martin Luther King. And then logically, I think that funding request would be incorporated within a funding request to replace Phelan Apartments as well.
And just for my own understanding on this, those funding mechanisms, it's a low interest loan or from the state?
It's a combination of two sources of funds. It is the federal housing tax credit, which we then sell to a bank. So in the case of Martin Luther King, those credits were sold to KeyBank. And that provides capital that is in return for a federal tax benefit, but doesn't add rent burden because there's no repayment of those funds. There's no debt. And then a small amount of debt, low interest debt provided by the state of New York.
And both of those funding streams are restricted in this way, or it's just the low interest debt?
It's actually the tax credits that are restricted this way, and the tax credits pay for the majority of the capital cost.
Okay, great. Well, looking forward to
Okay.
the next round. And then I remembered my previous question when we were talking about the length of the waiting lists. Just wanted to check in on what that translates to in terms of actual years on a waiting list.
It depends. I mean, sometimes, you know, the turnover, say at like Griswold Heights, it's much more quickly of a turnover. So we can move those lists up pretty quickly, but a Grand Street where we have very few apartments that turn over, years. Our Section 8 waiting list is over 1,000, and we haven't had that open in 2 years now. And that's for people that we would provide Section 8 vouchers to go out into apartments in the community. Just like I said, there's just such a need for affordable housing. There's a need for that assistance, and you know, unfortunately, it takes. You know, some of them take a long time. Our Conway Court, Kane Apartments, Kennedy Towers is consistently 100% full with a long waiting list.
And Deb, is that residents or is it all the capital region? Is it Troy residents? Do they have preference? How does that work? And the 1,000 or 400, is that capital region residents also?
Well, we have an opportunity with an application that then anybody can apply, but then we give preferences. We give preferences to City of Troy residents. We give preferences to people who work. We give preferences to people who work in Troy. We give preferences for homeless individuals, veterans. You know, so depending on the number of preferences, those particular individuals can move up the list more quickly. You know, we built the veterans housing. We have 8 units, and that's been consistently filled. We have over 100 veterans on a waiting list for that particular building. You know, we're accommodating. One of the good things about Troy Housing that we do is that we screen our applicants. We screen them criminal history. We screen them their prior landlords. You know, a number of items that we go through before we actually approve somebody to come into our apartments.
And you coordinate with the other housing authorities in the capital region, correct? You know, do you or no?
In what way?
Just in terms of placement, like say somebody's on the list, do you coordinate, say, with Ward of Lee and some of the other municipalities, or?
They would have, individuals would have to apply to each
Gotcha.
Jurisdiction. We do accept through our Section 8 program, anybody in the country who wants to pour it into the City of Troy. And we have a philosophy here of absorbing them. So if there's somebody that moves from California that has a Section 8 voucher and they find an apartment in the City of Troy, we will absorb that voucher and administer that file. So we're getting people that are coming from other areas moving into the city.
Councilmember Cummings.
So when we say absorb the file, does that come with additional funding from HUD for those vouchers, or that?
No, the HUD voucher is just the difference in the rent versus the 30% of the family's income.
Right.
So when I say we absorb it, we absorb whatever that subsidy is that family is entitled to. HUD provides that subsidy.
And when you said there's a waiting period, or a waiting list for the Section 8 vouchers, quite substantial one. Let's see. It sounds like that's not a restriction in available housing, that's a restriction in available funds from HUD.
Right, and we're limited. We only have 925 vouchers.
Do we converted a few of these apartments to additional vouchers? Do I remember that correctly?
No, we converted what was the prior HUD subsidy, which goes by the term public housing subsidy, which is called ACC, into Section 8 vouchers so that we could incorporate the private financing that came with the state tax credit allocation.
But as I remember, we ended up reducing the total number of units a little bit here. And,
Yes.
And
So-
therefore having a few additional vouchers for.
Well, these, any of the RAD projects, which we've converted over 1,000 units so far we've closed on. Those are separate from our regular tenant-based vouchers, which is the 925 that I spoke about. The Martin Luther King, that was all approved, like Duncan mentioned, ACC, which is a public housing subsidy. So that we've converted to a different subsidy. It's like a Section 8 subsidy, but it's not in the cap of what Troy can have.
Great. And am I remembering wrong, or I feel like there was some discussion of when that happened that there was some slight reduction in the total number of units at MLK initially before the new additions, and that reduction was being seen sort of as the scattered site integration conversion to Section 8 availability in the neighborhood.
Well, there are some reductions in the actual project, and part of that was because Martin Luther King, as it stands before we started the renovation, we had a lot of one-bedroom units, and our waiting lists are also by bedroom size, and one-bedrooms aren't as in demand as some of the more 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. We also had some 5 bedrooms, which is kind of rare, but believe it or not, our 5-bedroom waiting lists are also smaller. So what we did was we put in more 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, which is what the demand was in the waiting list, so that the actual number of apartments changed.
And in addition, the 8 units of veterans housing that the authority built in North Troy came from ACC units that were ported and converted to Section 8 vouchers to that little project. So, and that was intentional, and it really picked up this. Martin Luther King had before the renovation aluminum wiring, and that led to a few fires, and one of those fires destroyed 8 units.
That was, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, July 4th.
Oh, yeah.
The big fire that took down that middle building.
Yeah.
That was 8 units, and we went off-site and built 8 units and actually designated to veterans. So moving forward on the scattered sites, we are looking at Arnold Fallon, which is on the river. That particular parcel needs a lot of work, and we are looking, maybe to do scattered sites from there.
Councilmember Bicenter, then Councilmember Parator.
I would just, I would just encourage any of the conversations about scattered site to be, continue moving in that direction. I think there's both, for the integration of the communities, I think it's really key, but also the resilience of neighborhood communities to have different, the different types of housing. I think broadly makes us a more sustainable place to live. I had another question, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parator.
I apologize, I should have asked this at the outset. Deb, what is your last name and what is your position?
My last name is Witkowski, and my position is the executive director
Of the Troy Housing
of the
Authority.
Troy Housing Authority.
Do you have a card or something?
I do. I can give it to you after.
Great, thank you.
Council President,
Councilmember Gully, then Councilmember Bicenter.
is there a plan or a preliminary timeline on the 21 units when you'll move in that direction for those units?
So we have a specific site and plan in mind. But we have to wait to apply for the funding until we've at least started the construction. So we would hope to
But
apply
there's a
next
full
year.
plan to Start that
Yeah.
by next year.
Yes, yes, sir.
And Deb, do we look for other avenues of affordable housing outside of Rensselaer County? I mean, not outside of our county, but inside Rensselaer County that can be utilized outside of the city of Troy?
We wouldn't be able to do that with the Troy Housing Authority.
Well, I mean, we had so many people that were unseated that needed a place. Couldn't we focus to send them in that area where they're?
Oh, you mean send people
Yes,
out?
yes,
Yeah,
people
we
are on the
could-
list to
we-
get 'em-
Of
get 'em
course.
placed,
I
So
think
you
meant
do-
build outside of.
Oh, no.
No, we could, certainly could,
But you do collaborate with the other
Yes.
municipalities and villages around?
Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good questions.
Council President.
Councilmember December, then
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Just want to note that it's
Yeah.
7:00.
Thank you. What was the number, do you have a sense of how many veterans are on the waiting list?
Just on the veterans housing, there's more than 100, but because we have veterans as a preference, there's probably veterans in all of our different lists.
Okay,
I mean, I can get you that statistic.
that would be great. Maybe I'll come see you afterwards.
Okay.
Further discussion? Okay, you guys don't want to add anything? I think we're all square.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Resolution 48, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 48 carries, 6-0. The Reso 49, I was just reading it, Steve. Per the charter, we haven't introduced the local law. You have to introduce it at the regular meeting. So it'll be introduced next Thursday. Then we refer it to the public hearing.
Right.
Okay? So technically, we can't do Reso 49 because the local law officially can't be introduced until August 1st. Okay, so I'm going to withdraw that, if that's okay. And we'll refer it to the public hearing next week. Okay? The local law, this Reso is a public hearing for the local law. The local law is not introduced. You have to introduce a local law at a regular meeting per the charter. It's FYI to them. It's FYI. This is a finance meeting. You have to introduce a local law at a regular meeting. So it'll be introduced next Thursday and referred to the public hearing. So this can be moved to next
So
Thursday.
this will just go directly on the.
Correct.
on the regular
Yep.
meeting agenda.
Because it's not officially introduced yet. You can't schedule a public hearing to a non-introduced local law. We'll do it next Thursday.
So this is gonna be for unanimous consent next Thursday.
It's just on
The
agenda.
regular,
Just be
the regular meeting. You don't need a Reso scheduled public hearing. You refer it to the public hearing. So technically, we don't need the Reso. When it's introduced at the August 1st, we refer it to public hearing. And then Mara will do the legal notice,
So
et
just take this
cetera.
all
Yep.
together.
Although I will just note for the record that it has been council practice to have resolutions scheduling public hearings so that the whole council can have a say in when those hearings are conducted.
That's not the case for all. I can
Obviously,
tell you.
it's not required, you can do what you want, but it has been the practice.
I'll second
So
that.
resolution 49, we can't do anyway. So we'll move to resolution 51. Resolution 50 per email has been withdrawn. Resolution 51, resolution approving the City of Troy application to the New York State for a grant under the Climate Smart Communities Grant Program. Council Member Kennedy, do I have a motion? I'll make a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December, discussion. Councilmember Kennedy, if you just want to give us a quick briefing, and this
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah, I'll just note that this is a product of the newly formed Sustainability Task Force as a priority item, which will basically, if we are awarded the grant, provide funding to complete basic greenhouse gas inventory, which is a step that we need to take in order to potentially complete a climate action plan in the future as a city. And so this is just another. It would be a big accomplishment to get this done as far as one, the Climate Smart Communities program is concerned, but also it gives us data and information we can use in several other ways. So yeah, I think it's good.
Council President,
Yep, Councilmember Paratar.
I think this is wonderful, and I really want to applaud the efforts of my colleague, Mr. Kennedy, for really months and months and months of work on such an important thing. Appreciate it.
And Councilmember Kennedy, I did some research over the last week. The Sustainability Task Force might want to take a look. City of Plattsburgh went the same route as us. They're about 9 months ahead of us. And they did the climate action plan and actually outlined their priorities. It's incredible. It's very in-depth. It actually has projects. They first obviously did the mission statement, all of that, and then went into an actual project list of priorities, and they broke it down by categories. It's fantastic. You should take a look. It's a really good model for the task force, but certainly this is a great first step, and hopefully we'll get this grant.
Great. Yeah, we'll look at it. We have been looking at other cities of similar size and character to Detroit to work off of what they've been successful at. So definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 51 carries 6-0. We already did Resolution 52, and we'll go to Resolution 53, resolution appointing commissioners of deeds for the city of Troy. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December, discussion.
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember.
I think Mr. Doherty is an excellent person for this position. I applaud that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 53 carries 6-0. We will take a motion in a second and go into, Monica, did you want to say something before we close?
Yeah, I just have an update on the issue with the chemicals.
Oh, yeah.
So Greg texted me back and said that the area that is near your house and those houses along Park Avenue, that is not treated, that is just mowed. But he will talk to Josh. We notify people at the clubhouse. We know we put signs up at the first tee, at the 10th tee. But we also will take a look at some of the direct adjacent property owners. If we do treat near their houses, we will look to notify them as well.
Oh,
But
good.
your area is not treated.
Oh, it doesn't get treated.
No, that hillside, so the tee and the first tee does, but that big field area behind your house, that does not get treated. It
It's
just
in-
gets mowed.
It's important that good signage be
Yep.
put along the walkways, because those of us that don't play golf
Yeah.
want to make use of that park. A lot of people walk that early in the morning and walk their dogs and things, and so adequate signage is really
Yep.
important.
Okay, so I've already put them on notice to see if we can improve that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Definitely. Thank you, Monica. So, yep, Councilmember.
I'll just ask that we have maybe unanimous consent to have a resolution changing the paper of record to be the Bennington.
Oh, stop it. Okay, thank you. He's a troublemaker. Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn in a second, then we'll go into the special meeting. Fabulous reporter. Do I have a motion?
Absolutely straight up.
Do I have a motion to
Motion.
adjourn? Motion, Councilmember December. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. All in favor of adjourning and going?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are just going to take a 2 minutes, Councilmember Parator. Why don't you serve some lemonade? Yeah.
This is from.
We will be going into the special meeting in 3 minutes, as soon as Councilmember Parator gets back.
This